Oh boy, does anyone else find running uphill just really hard work? I've got to say, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the things, but unfortunately, there is no avoiding them. So it's time we nail the technique required to go up them. Now, running uphill is obviously a little bit different to running on the flat thanks to gravity. Naturally, you end up having to work a bit harder and potentially run a bit slower. As a result, there are certain aspects of our running technique and gait that we can alter and work on to make things a little more efficient with our running, but also potentially easier. So first off, the arm action. Now, I'm not saying this needs to change necessarily, providing you're doing it correctly on the flat already, but the movement of our arms is really important on uphills because basically the arms drive and help the drive of the knee, which is a really, really important element of uphill run technique. So as a rough guide, you want to hold your arms at around a 90-degree bend in your elbow. Forearms, hands should be really nicely relaxed, and you want to be driving them back and forwards, making sure not to cross over the center line. And if it helps, something that I often think of is if you're trying to pull yourself up the hill on some imaginary ropes going up the hill. And something a lot of people don't realize as well is the arm action also helps to just correct that body alignment. So you do want to make sure you're swinging them back and forwards. Okay then. Where do we look when we're running uphill? Well, it can be very tempting to almost look directly down at the ground in front of you. Don't do that. You want to try and look up and forwards, and that in turn is going to help with your posture when running and keeping that nicely up. If you start looking down at the ground in front of you, well, you can end up sort of slumped over when you're running. Equally, try not to hinge forwards and over from the hips. Again, very tempting as we're leaning into the hills. You want to try and lean forwards from the ankles, as you should be trying to on the flat too. Now, this can feel quite extreme because you feel like you're leaning into the hills, but it should feel nice and natural too. And then going up from the hips, we've got our shoulders. Try not to slump your shoulders over and squeeze and constrict your chest. Again, that's going to affect your breathing, but also if you start to work hard, the shoulders start to creep up and that's going to start to affect that arm movement. So try and keep the shoulders nice and relaxed and let the legs do the work. Now then, as the hill becomes steeper, you will naturally find that your stride length becomes that bit shorter because, well, the ground is coming up that bit sooner to meet your foot, which is fine. Don't fight it. But to prevent you from slowing down too much, as you decrease that stride length, you want to actually increase your cadence. So shorter stride, increased cadence, but to encourage it and to help it better, you want to really use and drive those arms to get the legs moving faster. Right, and now let's talk pacing, because it can be very tempting to go all guns blazing, go hard from the start on a hill and just get it overdone with as quickly as possible. And it might be fine for some short hills, but as the hill gets longer, you very quickly find you've still got a lot of hill left in front of you. Equally, on those short hills, well, if you keep doing that throughout an entire run, you find that you're burning your matches very quickly. Think of it like driving a car. As you approach the bottom of the hill, you move down into an easier gear so you get that nice smooth transition. You don't find yourself in trouble partway up. Now, this may take a little bit of convincing, but holding back on climbs and then being able to crest the climbs and quickly get back into your normal running pace quite often ultimately ends up with a quicker overall running time compared to smashing up every climb. Now, if you need a little bit of guidance in terms of effort and pace, well, heart rate is great for that. So trying to maintain the same heart rate from the flat into the climbs or as close to as possible, just taking into account that slight lag that you experience with heart rate, but ultimately making sure you're avoiding that you're going into the red and doing some damage. Now, of course, it is a relief to get to the top of the hill, at least for most people. And therefore, it can be very easy to just collapse over in that relief. However, you do obviously want to take in the view, but it's much better to just crack on, keep that effort from the hill going on over the crest and into the flat or into the descent. And you will actually ultimately find that you are recovering better and you'll find yourself getting back into your rhythm far, far quicker. Now, of course, if it is a really steep climb, you may find yourself needing to walk up the hill. And finally, let's talk tactics. Now, if the hill gets really steep, then don't be afraid to walk the hill. It's a tactic that a lot of ultra runners do, and actually something that I had to adopt recently for some of my longer distance runs, and it took a while to get my head around it, but actually it just makes some of these longer runs far more sustainable. And in some cases, when the hill is really that steep, walking is almost, if not as quick as running. And then when you crest the top of the hill, obviously for most of us out there, it's a relief to do that, and therefore we can find our form just collapsing and falling in that relief. But try to stay tall, try and stay strong with good form and good posture, and get back into that nice comfortable rhythm. Now, despite many of us disliking hills, they are a fantastic training aid. The more that we do them, the better we get at pacing them, the better we get at holding our form up them, and the better we get at also just mentally breaking them down and tackling the hills. They are fantastic for improving our cardiovascular fitness and also our strength by being able to put out the same sort of effort on the flat, but with less impact going through our lower limbs. So if you are injury prone, it can be fantastic for that. Now, I am going to finish with a little bit of a caveat. Hills may not necessarily ever get easier because you may just simply get better at running them. But that does mean that you perhaps are able to do the hills faster and get them over and done with quicker, which is a pretty cool thing. Well, I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If so, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like. Don't forget to give us a follow over on social media. And if you would like to see more videos like this, a load more run technique advice, then make sure that you're subscribed to our channel by hitting the icon just down below.